Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Last month, a movie that has been seen around the world, a movie that has grossed millions upon millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. A movie series that has grossed billions. Yeah. One Disney has bought for billions of dollars from somebody named George Lucas. Star Wars. Obviously, if you haven't seen it by now, we won't try and give away too many spoilers, but we're just not going to be able to help ourselves. I mean, it is over a month that this movie has come out. And if you're listening to this, if you're listening to episode 15 of Cellar Door Skeptics, Chris, Hanna, and I decided we'd have a little bit of fun tonight and talk about Star Wars: The Force Awakens, even though he's not even seen the damn movie.
No, I've been buried in the come home every night and take over for my wife to just take care of the baby for a little while because I've been gone at work all day, and she, whatever, just help out. So we haven't done anything fun recently. She's only been around for a few months, and so I've been pretty tied up. We do stuff for this show every once in a while at night, but other than that, I haven't gone out and done much, man.
And we went. I took the whole family. Well, I didn't take my younger girls because I didn't think that they would sit through it. But we went took the whole family, and we went and saw it. I had some vacation time about a week after it came out.
Did you do IMAX?
No, we didn't do IMAX. We were supposed to do IMAX tonight, but we couldn't get a babysitter, and we have a friend in town that wanted to go. And so I asked him if he'd reschedule it maybe for next weekend or the weekend after, because I'd like to see it in IMAX. I enjoyed the movie. But for anybody that has not seen the movie, Star Wars: The Force Awakens is a completely different production. It's not done by George Lucas, as he sold the rights to it. And I'm torn a little bit, though the last movies he made were kind of mediocre. They didn't fit the franchise as well, but they were more boring stories. But this new movie, I think, kind of reboots the series and adds a different, if you want to call it, technique to how they're going to be more progressive in how they make movies. And that was a big thing for me. When I started to see more female roles that didn't have to come out in bikinis, and I got to see, some more minority roles show up, it makes more sense, right? Because we're talking about a galaxy far, far away, right?
Yeah. And JJ is known for that stuff. Like the guy is he's a good director. He's known for being a little bit more inclusive and not just bowing down to, I guess, one group or the Hollywood demands for that squared, chiseled, jawed white male lead. So he's a pretty good director with that kind of stuff in mind.
Yeah, and which is good because in the aspect that we have to look at the movie and taking my kids to see it, it's nice for them to be able to see a more inclusive society. Because if you think about it, we don't live in just a white society, for fuck's sake. I mean, we don't live in an alien society either, guaranteed. But if you look at the
we're not
way,
going to shoot Guido.
We're not going to shoot Guido. But and if you look at the way evolution works and how everything kind of comes together, you can understand that it makes more sense to be more inclusive. Because logically, if you make the amount of people and make it times 1 billion. And put all these people all over the, fucking galaxy, it's not logical that you would only have white people. That's just stupid. And I get it. It's the 70s, right? They weren't quite as inclusive or PC or understanding as other people were. But
you PC bro?
PC bro, yes. But that's the best part about this. They're able to adapt to the times and evolve and understand that, hey, we've got a growing demographic. And it's unfair to turn around and say, we're only going to do white people, or we're only going to have a few minorities, and we're going to cast the woman as the unintended equal. And it's funny because even Carrie Fisher, she stepped up to the plate before, and in reality, there's a meme going around. It's kind of funny, but she lost her home planet. She's lost her parents. She's literally gone through more shit than any of the male leads in the whole movie, even the early ones. And it's just kind of funny because the early movies portrayed her as some hot female that had to do this, and this is the only way to...
The damsel in distress.
Yeah, the damsel in distress thing. And that's kind of bullshit. And so it's refreshing to see the Moo movie take away from that and move into a more inclusive and not quite be so cookie cutter, if you want to call it, to the misogynistic and, kind of somewhat racist tones that we see in some of these movies. And I think it's important that we address this because, we look at it, we say, hey, there's a female lead. Though she didn't get as much screen time as I would have liked. And, they kind of downplayed her in a lot of the commercials. It wasn't as forthgoing. But Disney tried to at least go out of its way to develop a story that's not quite so, again, white and male. and so we want to talk a little bit about the importance of that. Is that important? I could ruin the movie. We could talk about who killed who and why they had to kill people off. Because I have a theory of, they bring back the old cast. They're fucking old, man.
I saw some photos.
Through all 3 movies that they're going to put out again. It's not even logical. But let's not spoil too much. I'm going to throw one spoiler at the end of the segment just to be a dick. But, Chris, why do you think it's important now, that Disney went ahead and put a female lead? And one that wasn't just a damsel in distress this time. One that was more authoritative. One that was on her feet, could fight for herself, understood what she wanted. Why do you think they chose to do that? Do you think it was done on purpose? Do you think it was them just trying to fit in with the times? Or do you think they genuinely accept this as a premise that we just should all understand?
My first thought is that this could be a way of kind of trying to take a new leaf, like in the dialectic that we talk about, trying to go in a new direction or change something. I don't know really of any major science fiction story that really has that strong female lead. Joss Whedon from the Firefly series, there's an awesome quotation, and I always think about it whenever I think of the strong female lead. Is an actor or a reporter asked him, "Why do you write these strong female characters?" And he said, "Because you're still asking me that question." And I mean, that's the best response I've ever heard. Is that it shouldn't be a big deal that there's a strong female character. And so I think that in the times that have changed since the original Star Wars, I think maybe it could have been an unconscious decision. They wanted to create the story, and someone wrote the story, and they said, well, let's try something from a female perspective, and obviously adding the minority characters as well. Those things, a female lead and a minority character, to me, those don't make any difference at all. Is the movie good? And so, my perspective, the strong female lead is the story a good story, not so much what's the sex of the main character. So I would hope that Disney and the executives and those people just unconsciously tried to make the best story possible, and that's just kind of the way it formed. They could have tried to say, hey, nobody's done this before. Let's try to get the female demographic more interested in science fiction. Or even in the toy section is one of the things that we're going to talk a little bit about, is whether or not is it more males that check out this stuff. So is that another way to get them interested in it? It's having a strong female lead. I don't know. I would say that Disney probably has statistics and people who do all kinds of math, because let's face it, these companies are in this to make money. So they may be trying to change the social conversation, say, hey, if we do this, we'll get some more press this way. But I don't know if it's like I said, a conscious thing or not. I hope that they just went for the best story, and then that's the reason why, as opposed to trying to make some kind of change.
Yeah, but I disagree. I do think we need a little bit of change. I do think that we need to see this. I do think that we need to understand that it's not just the male leads that are going to draw the crowds. And I think that it's kind of like a self-defeating prophecy here. We talked about feminism last week, and I'm sure that we probably will get some emails again about the feminist topic, because not everybody agrees with us. I mean, I had an old co-host that basically came out and said, I'm not a feminist. And you know what I say? Fuck you, asshole. Like, we've had this conversation before. Blow it out your fucking head. Do you want to go through the statistics? Oh, you don't want to actually have a conversation with me. You just want to do what's popular at the time. And I would like to say that it's not popular to be PC. I know South Park makes fun of it. We did an episode. If you haven't heard it, go back to episode 2. I believe it's 2. Go back to episode 2, maybe 3. And we'll post a description and we'll post a link in the description. But go back to one of our old episodes, and we talk about that. What's PC? Is it okay to be PC? What's too much? What's not too much? And I would like to say that Disney maybe did make a conscious effort to say, hey, is there a way to write a story that makes it more fair? Is there a reason we should put more of a female lead in? Because I think there is. I think we need to not just show that we support female role models. I think that we just need to accept that this is part of society. This should have been part of society before, and then people ignored it because they didn't want to think. Why did women not like science fiction before? Well, if it doesn't relate to them, why the fuck would they like it? You know?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like the idea of having the female lead, making a little bit more money, getting females and women and girls interested in the science fiction genre. If there's a strong female character that they can connect to, I basically what I mean was, if they didn't make a conscious decision, they just thought this is a great story, that's awesome. But I do think that if they did make this decision that, hey, we should do this because it's a good thing to do, that's an awesome decision. So I don't know if it's something that I didn't get across completely, but I think if they did consciously make this decision because they want to make this, a bigger conversation piece and to try to change the way it works, that's awesome. That's what they should have done, and that's what more people should do. I think it's in my head. I don't see the issues when because I personally don't have those bias. So I just, awesome. That's great. That's the way it should be. Sometimes I don't get out of my echo chamber enough to realize that the rest of the world still has problems with this stuff, because I don't experience it very much.
Yeah. And I guess I would challenge you, Chris. I would almost challenge you to look a little harder then, because if we actually look into this, we can see that it does happen. I mean, you said so yourself. How many science fiction movies have strong female leads?
Not very many. And,
and how many get killed off or have to get naked? I mean, tons of them. I mean, hey, you're a female. Yep, get naked. Why? Because they're not appealing to all audiences. They're appealing to certain aspects. And it's funny because there's certain movies, gore aspects appeal to me. Honestly, I like gory movies. I love to see people's heads cut off, holes in their head. God, I love all of that stuff. But I don't, particularly care for the nudity side of it. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like nudity or porn, but for me as an individual, I have a harder time with, they're ruining this movie because they're adding these things into it. And I just see them as pointless sometimes when it's completely driven by the male perspective. And if I sit there and I go, hey, well, sometimes I think about, how this woman would look in my head, and I sit there and go, oh, well, shit. That's what this movie's doing. It's playing to my bias, or my echo chamber, as you call it. And I just think that it's nice and refreshing to see a movie walk out of that aspect. Yeah,
we've seen some stuff, and not in the science fiction genre, but Jennifer Lawrence has been kind of bouncing around. She's a young and up-and-coming, actually, she's arrived. She's an absolute mega
she
star
made millions
now.
and millions of dollars.
Yeah, she's a mega star now.
Come on.
But she was just talking about, like, when she was in a few movies, and the male actors still made more than her. Sometimes they would not have had as recent of a success streak or something along those lines, but she's just brought the conversation out, and she's been slammed for it. And I would think that the main character for this new Star Wars, the female lead, if she can bring this stuff out, this is the first movie that I've ever seen her in, or I haven't seen the movie yet, but this is the first major movie I believe that she has had the lead in, and so she might not feel established enough to really challenge the establishment per se, but it would be nice to see, like, equal pay working its way into this conversation, as well as having just more diversity in lead characters and stuff. Because let's face it, these major companies, they're not risk takers anymore, right? The action movie with the Jean-Claude Van Damme or the Arnold Schwarzenegger clone, those are the movies that smash and bash their way into the money. They're not risk takers. They're not going to try to challenge the status quo. Disney's big enough, so they could possibly take that chance. And if that's what they did on purpose, we can applaud them for it.
Yep. And the other thing, and we don't need to spend too much longer on this, because I want to talk a little bit about if we can enjoy supernatural movies as atheists. But, another thing that kind of, struck me is Carrie Fisher. And she came out, and she was in this movie, and she didn't have a big role in it. I mean, she was in it. You could see her. It was nice, refreshing to see her as a commander, as somebody in charge, giving orders. And it's nice to see her come back. But there were some statements that were made. Some people were basically accusing her of saying, well, you're not as attractive as you used to be. And I just want to go, fuck off. What the fuck is it? Who cares? What does that add to the movie? And you know what? Again, we talked about this, a few minutes ago. For fuck's sake, she watched her whole planet get destroyed by her father. I mean, if that's not one of the most fucking awful things that could happen to you, you watch all your loved ones get destroyed in a heartbeat while your father's killing them. I mean, that's to me, that she has, she's just awesome. And
then on top of that, like, what people talk about, oh, you're not so good looking, so we're just going to give you like a back role as like a commander, and you're going to be, not interesting and whatever. Like, what do you expect her to come out in the slave Leia outfit? I mean, really, that's not the depth of character and strength of character that we would expect someone who survived the entire previous story of the entire thing. Like, she survived it. She battled her way through it. She's now a tough commander. I would expect her in the real world to have gone from damsel in distress princess to a tough commander fighting in a rebel force or in charge of a rebel force. That's a natural progression for someone who deals with a lot of adversity in life. This is a realistic type thing. It isn't this, I guess, the pretty face or the damsel in distress thing that just lasts forever. Like, you're always just going to be weak. It's nice to see her. She's strong. She's powerful. As she was somewhat increased in her, I guess, respectful level in the original movies, because towards the end in the third movie that she was in, she had a pretty esteemed and powerful position. But
yeah. So the last thing that we got to do is we got to look at the supernatural side, because when I saw the Star Wars movies originally, I was very young. I was still a Christian. When I saw the second set of Star Wars movies, I was also a Christian. A little bit more wayward, but I was still a Christian. And now I'm sitting down watching this and sitting here, and they keep saying, the Force will be with you. And I just keep sitting there going, faith, faith. Except for this, you can see this faith. I guess that's the difference. You can actually see this faith. I could kill you with my hand,
There's evidence. That's evidence, man.
There's evidence, yeah. and so, not everybody in the universe or the galaxy gets to see the evidence. So it's only evidence to those that are on the Jedis and the Sith. And I sat there and I thought, and I watched the movie, and I'm sitting there going, the whole time I'm having a harder time with it, because I don't enjoy movies based on religion. I don't enjoy movies based on faith anymore. And that's what I feel, some of these movies are. But then I stopped and I go, okay, well, hold on. Who gives a shit, right? It's just a fucking movie. I mean, and it's not here to preach that you need this. You don't need the Force to win. And I think this movie actually did a very good job to explain that there's not always do you need the Force to win. Not always will the Force be conflicting with each other. And in the end, anybody can, be the Force. And I know they haven't revealed, whether one of the characters has the Force or not. I know they revealed the main
I sure hope they didn't
has.
talk about the midi-chlorians again.
Yes. And they started talking about that.
Oh, okay.
But they didn't talk about it for one character, and I'll leave his name out of it just because I don't want to make too many spoilers. But anyway, there's one character that can use a lightsaber and is very good with it, and he's able to do different things that you would assume only came with the Force. So either he's really fucking lucky, or he may be, able to use the Force and just not know it. But if he doesn't, let's say they get through 3 movies and he doesn't have that. To me, that almost shows that they're almost debunking that whole supernatural thing, that they believe in it. They believe that there's some aspect to it. But it's almost more like a superhero movie where some people grow into or are born with certain abilities that others aren't. And that's realistic. I mean, I can't do what you do for a fucking living. In any way, shape, or form. I could never do what you do, even with all the training. I'm just not that skilled with my hands. I'm honestly not.
Oh, I would say that I always give people the benefit of the doubt that if you spend enough time, you could become adequate at just about anything. Like, you would really have to rock it. But I think you could do it. I mean, I wouldn't say that what I do is incredibly difficult. It just takes a long time. Like, it takes 7 years to complete a standard training to become like a full-fledged machinist or an engineer. Like,
yeah. But in reality, I'll tell you, I'm not good with cars. I mean, or good with my hands. I'm not great with cars either. Yeah, obviously, I gotta get a new car. I just put all that work into it. I'm not great with cars, but I enjoy tinkering with them. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't do that. It just probably means I shouldn't get paid to do that because I'm not going to be successful business-wise. And there's lots of other things I'm great at. But, with my hands, I don't have the greatest coordination. It is what it is, right? Yeah. Let's not harp on it. But
for me, I can, back to the supernatural movie stuff, I can watch those movies to suspend belief a little bit. Like, okay, this is going to be a science fiction movie. This is going to be a fantasy movie or whatever. And I just kind of remove myself from it. I try not to be over analytical and just I don't know. I guess a douchebaggery is because I'm
Douchebaggery.
douchebaggy. Yeah, whatever. I'm so.
Are you Fred Durst now?
I'm
You wear a
trying.
red
I'm
hat?
trying. I'm trying
You're
to not
trying.
be.
I'm buy you a red hat. You'll have a red hat next week.
I'm trying not to be the atheist that I tell people not to be, where you're always harping about something, you're always negative about it. It's like I can watch a science fiction movie and not just rag the whole time. I can just, okay, this is a cool movie, it's a story, it's its own separate thing, and I've been a little bit better at it. I have to consciously think about it. I do prefer to watch movies set in more of a realistic nature with science and stuff. Like, if you're talking detective stories and things, like really, really talking the science. The Bone Collector was a really great one, and some of the science of psychology and how they find people. Those things interest me. I do still like Star Wars and The Hobbit, but I find that I like them less now. It's not so much I don't like those kinds of movies, but I just like them less, and so I'm more gravitating towards more realistic, more realism type movies. But I still like them. I don't have any kind of, I guess, it's supernatural or fantasy. I just don't like it anymore. I would hope that I can just relax for 2 hours.
Yeah. For me, and I agree with you, and for me, it kind of comes down to it's taken me a while, but I've finally been able to realize and start to accept some of those things in those movies, because I can sit there and I can distinguish between the two. I can go, okay, hold on, right? Supernatural movies, as long as they don't basically express you have to have faith without sight, they don't bother me as much as they used to. I thought that Star Wars would bother me. I went into it thinking this is going to bother me. I got, a quarter of the way through it, and I was like, this kind of bothers me. And then I kind of sat there and I thought, halfway through, I sat there and thought, I wasn't paying that much attention, I guess. But I sat there and I thought, well, they're not advocating faith without sight. I mean, they're not saying you should believe in the Force, but we're not going to prove it to you. And I think in the end, if you look at a lot of superhero movies and a lot of supernatural type movies, they don't expect you to believe without, seeing it. How many more horror movies do you see where people just get killed and you never see the bad guy? Very few. That doesn't really happen. How many superhero movies do you not know the origins of it? So a lot of that makes actual sense. And the more I think about it, the more I can actually accept these things. And I started watching superhero TV shows just recently more often, and I'm enjoying them now because I can distinguish the fact that they're accepting the fact that this is all bullshit. But hey, have a background story, have an example of what I can do to prove to you that what I believe in or what I am is not bullshit.
Yeah, and it's entertainment. Like, just the understanding that it's entertainment. You can just relax and enjoy it. I think that is something that I think we need to do a little bit more. Just kind of just tone it down a little bit and just not be the token angry atheist.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to have a drink because that's what we do on this show, right?
Yeah.
And for those of you who are listening, I still have a little bit of whiskey left over. So I'm going to give the end of this segment is for Bullet. If you've never tried Bullet whiskey, make sure you go out to your local store and purchase a bottle of Bullet whiskey. Either rye, regular, or 10-year. They'll all satisfy that urge to taste whiskey.
Oh, man.
We'll be right back with Hangovers, the science behind them, and if I could get Chris Hanna drunk enough that he can't drive home. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Demanda Wright.
And we're
promoting secular feminism. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Like what you're hearing? Check out more Cellar Door Skeptics every week right here on Spreaker and iTunes. Make sure you come back and check out new episodes with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. And always, remember, prepare for the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. We had a fun segment last segment, didn't we, Chris? We talked about a movie you've never seen. you got to comment on the movie like you'd seen it, but you haven't. You're
no, I
full of
didn't.
shit,
I didn't comment on it like I've seen it. I just commented on it. I mean, we talk about some topics that are connected to the movie, I guess. So.
Yeah. Well, it was about the movie. We just couldn't give too many spoilers away because we
want
want the PC crowd to come after us. So the silence that you're hearing is as we're preparing. So last episode or last segment, I said, hey, we're going to get Chris Hanna drunk, right? And we're going to talk about alcohol and hangovers. So we've never done this on air before. We usually do a shot or two in between the segments. And by the end, Chris can't walk out of my house and I got to call him an Uber car because Bernie uses it, so he has to use it, even though it's socialist. But we're gonna do a shot live on air. Are you ready, Chris?
Yeah,
on the count of 3. 3, 2, 1. Whoop whoop. Damn, he can swallow better than I can. But the whole point of not the point of the shot. The shot is not to cause a hangover. The hangover is an unfortunate side effect of drinking alcohol. And so I found this meme that says the chemistry of a hangover. And usually I kind of go, memes are stupid, right? But this one actually, I like this one. This has a lot of science in it.
I would call this an infographic more
an
than
infographic.
A meme.
It's
got
a
lot of good stuff in it.
It could be a meme. What would make it different than a meme?
Memes are usually a simple image with a couple of words in them. This has got a couple of paragraphs spread out.
It does. And it talks about what happens to alcohol in your body, and it happens to what happens after a night of drinking that causes hangovers. And I thought this was interesting because, I have reduced hangovers. I probably have reduced alcohol intake too compared to when I was a kid. But, the whole fact of a hangover, it's biological, it's evolutionary, there's reasons for it. And I thought that would be a great fun segment because, we always do Chris's serious science segment. So I said, fuck you, Chris. We're going to do a science segment that interests me because I like to fucking drink.
Well, you get hangovers? I mean, you said...
I do, but not as often as other people.
Okay, because I get them. Like, if I just drink 1 beer or 2 beers, I get a headache within like a half hour.
Jesus.
So, but like if I get 3, 4 deep and like hanging out for a night and just drinking beers or whatever, mixed drinks or shots or whatever, I don't get a headache until the morning. But I get headaches every time I drink. Like I just get headaches. That's just something that I've always been susceptible of, and it sucks. I think they last longer now that I'm over 30.
Yeah, so. See, and I don't have that issue. The older I get, the less hangover I have. Now, I'll admit, I don't drink shitty alcohol as much as I used to. I mean, right now I'm drinking a single malt Irish whiskey. And, we did shots of Jaeger with energy drinks, which do cause me more issues, probably more because of the energy drinks than the Jaeger. And I just don't drink bottom barrel alcohol all the time. But I also don't drink as much as I used to. I mean, I'll admit, when I was younger, we could easily polish off, a fifth a night if we really wanted to. And I don't do that like I used to anymore. There's not that same consumption.
My difference is the beer. Like I drink the craft beers, and depending on whether or not they pasteurize or not, they still have the yeast in them, and the way that they manufacture a lot of this stuff, it's got a lot more stuff in it. Like it's heavier, it's thicker, it's dense, the gravity's heavier, more IBUs, everything. These beers are much more intense than just drinking Bud Light or whatever. You can drink Bud Light all night long, but you cannot sit and drink like a whiskey or a Scotch style ale. You just can't do that all night long. It'll take you right out. So I think those beers are a little bit heavier, more. We're going to talk a little bit in a few minutes about all the other stuff inside the beer that could potentially cause these hangovers. And I think that's probably one of my issues. I don't drink just like I should start drinking just like a clear vodka, just something that's distilled a million times and it's clean and it's just simple. But I don't know. I loved all the craft brews and stuff. Grand Rapids, Beer City, Michigan. I've seen the advertisements for it. It's a big deal here. So I love the craft beer scene.
Yeah. And you're right. It is. I actually hate beer. And you can all hate on that. You can all shit on it. You can all send your hate mail to chrishanna@gmail.com. But, I don't like beer. I've actually not found a beer that I can drink a whole beer and actually genuinely enjoy it. I can drink a Guinness once in a great while, but only in small amounts. I can't drink a full 24 ounces. I could drink, maybe 8 or maybe 10. And I don't like any other beers. And I've had it's funny, my buddy brought over a very expensive fucking beer. One that was brewed and then aged in a whiskey barrel. And
that's what I was talking to, Scotch style ale. It's like Dirty Bastards, one that Founders made.
Yeah, but this one's a lot more off the rails, twice as expensive as even that. And he thought I'd love it. He'd be like, yeah, you love whiskey, you love scotch, you love Jameson, you love all these things. You'll love this beer. It's heavy. It's not going to be super, yeasty. And I tasted it, and I hated it. I did. I hated it more than I hated some of the other beers he brings over. And I'll be honest, I make a commitment. I drink one swallow of the beer.
And give it that's your test?
Just a test. That's Chris's test. I smell it first. If it smells bad, I won't drink it. I just don't. I smell it and I go, yep, fuck this shit. And I've drank not your granddad's beer before, and that's okay. I can drink a little bit of that, but that's usually almost too much sugar for me.
Yeah, the root beer.
Yeah, the root beer. It's not really beer.
Ugh.
I don't
know.
It
tastes like someone poured a shot of alcohol, just pure distilled alcohol into a root beer. I don't like it.
Yeah. My girl likes it, and like I said, I don't mind it. I think it tastes good. I like the Coney Island one better, but the whole point of this segment is not to talk about which alcohol you and I like, because we could do that segment. Actually, we could talk about it. We could talk about the evolution of my drinking taste, but I think what's more relevant is the chemistry of the Hangover, right? And they kind of break it up into this infographic, as Chris calls it. They break it up into 4 different categories. They talk about dehydration. The second one is called aldehydes, congeners, and the immune system. And so we start with dehydration, and it says alcohol is a diuretic effect on the body. It increases urine production. Alcohol-induced dehydration has been suggested as a cause for some hangover symptoms, but research suggests it's not a major factor. And I would almost tend to agree with that, because during the winter, I work in a warehouse. And I go from a 70, 72 degree office to a 50 to 60 degree warehouse floor all the time. I touch boxes all the time. That literally dehydrates me. I sweat quite a bit. Even in the winter, I still sweat quite a bit if I do physical labor. And, I try and drink as much water as I can. I try very hard to drink as much water as I can. But I don't think that to me, it seems like the dehydration only is a similar symptom or a similar effect on the hangover. Because if you think about it, how many times in a night do you have 7 beers and 8 glasses of water? Almost never.
Well, that's what they tell you. I was going to say, there's all these miracle things that people talk about. It's like, oh, this is the way you'll prevent a hangover, and they have some morning pills that you can take, and you're supposed to take them throughout the night and stuff. What I've seen is drink a glass of water in between drinks. Well, obviously, you're going to be full. You're not going to drink as much beer, but rehydrating yourself is going to be something. I mean, you're going to be increasing your the water content in your body and possibly replacing what would have been some alcohol. I can see that as an effective means to help reduce your dehydration, which could potentially cause unwanted side effects. I don't think dehydration, like they said, the research suggests it isn't a major factor. I've never been dehydrated. Let's say I didn't drink a lot of water and wake up with a headache and an upset stomach. You just you're fatigued a little bit, kind of like if you don't drink water after an athletic sport or something like that. You're a little bit slow. You're not quite feeling up to par. And you might be more susceptible to get sick, because I usually find that if you're not drinking very much water or whatever, or that's a great way to fight a cold, it's just to stay hydrated. So I don't think that's, like they said, a major cause for what a hangover would be for part of the dehydration.
Yeah. And so, could it play a factor? They do acknowledge it could play a factor, but they don't have any actual statistics or data to show that it's this big factor. So it probably doesn't play a big factor, but I could see the logic behind it. I could see if you're urinating out all of the good chemical or the good vitamins, and you're getting rid of all of the
you're putting nothing but bad stuff back in.
I can see how that could cause a greater potential for hangovers. But they go into the second one, the aldehydes. And aldehydes produced by the breakdown of alcohol have a toxic effect that could cause hangover symptoms. However, aldehyde symptoms, concentrations, don't significantly correlate with hangover severity. And so Chris, why don't you explain to everybody what an aldehyde is?
You're saying it a little bit wrong. It's acetaldehyde.
I'm going to say aldehyde because it sounds cooler to me, so you could go on and try and correct me, Grammar Nazi, but I'm going to say aldehyde.
All right, well, basically it's something that your body creates when it's breaking down the alcohol, and in some cases, in some scientific perspectives, it's more more poisonous to your body. It's more toxic than the actual alcohol itself. And so that's one of the reasons why they think that this is something that is causing some of that upset stomach and things of that nature. So basically, it's a byproduct. It's up to 30 times more toxic. So you would expect that to be a major factor in how bad you feel afterwards. And of course, when your body's breaking down the alcohol, removing the effects of the buzz that you get, and all that's left, or what it makes, is a bunch of poison that your body has to get rid of. That's probably one of the reasons why it upsets your stomach and things like that, because that's what alcohol actually does in your stomach. It's why it irritates your stomach and intestine. My guess is that it probably fights and reacts with the mucus lining in there. So they say that itself could be a major piece, but there's a Korean study where they talk about people that have the next thing, which is they're called cytokines, and this is also on the graphic that we were talking about here. But I found a nice article that we're going to include from ifuckinglovescience.com, and in this one they talk about a Korean study where they measure the result of the immune systems when people have alcohol in their system, and there's a thing called a cytokine. And a cytokine is derived from a combination of Greek words. It means cell, and kinos. Cyto means cell. Kinos meaning movement. Cytokines are cells that signals molecules that aid cell communication and immune responses. So basically, what it does is it stimulates the movement of cells towards the inflammation. So these are the communicated, like the managers of your immune system. It says, hey, something's bad over here. You should go take care of this inflammation, this infection, or trauma. Well, in the Korean study, they found people with hangovers also had high levels of these things. And so this is another thing that they think could potentially be the reason. They said that some people, though, don't have really high levels. So they're not sure. Once again, this is more research is needed to find these things. Basically, what I think is coming here is we're seeing how some of these things seem to be bad. They're not always bad. I'm going to say that it's probably a little bit of a blend of everything with the immune system. But you've got something on here in the graphic called cogeners, and this is what I was talking about with the vodka or whatever. Have you ever seen what cogeners are?
I could see the graphic and I could tell you what all the damn letters mean, but no, I've never seen one under a microscope.
It's all,
and I don't see them floating in my drink. I mean,
no.
I got a nice single barrel, whiskey.
It's not
here,
super.
And I don't see them.
It's not super dark. But usually,
you see them?
Yeah, I can see. I
see Ice Cube.
They're a little. It's a little yellow, so I'm going to say that the coloration in your drink there is probably going to be something indicative of the presence of cogeners. They're compounds other than the ethanol in drinks, that's the alcohol that we're. Methanol is is like there's different levels of the alcohol, and ethanol is the one that you want. If you're brewing your own stuff, the very first distilled alcohol will come out. It'll be methanol, and that's why you hear the old thing about if you drink moonshine you go blind. It's because they drink the first batch that's got methanol in it. Methanol will make you go blind. But back to random tidbit here. But cogeners,
don't make your own moonshine, folks.
Yeah. Well, if you do, at least get rid of the first few batches.
Or make or like the Moonshine Jesus podcast over there in South Carolina. They drink their own damn moonshine.
Yeah. Well,
on the show.
Basically, what I was talking about with the beer earlier is that I'm drinking stuff that's got more crap in it. Basically, it's not just like vodka, which is distilled, and gin is the same kind of way. Those are usually good drinks. They're clear drinks. If you're gonna drink and you're susceptible to hangovers, it's probably better to move to something clear. But the cogeners are compounds other than ethanol in these drinks, and they include alcohol such as methanol. And it breaks down which methanol breaks down in your body. When it's done breaking down methanol, it turns it into formaldehyde and formic acid. Formaldehyde is poisonous to humans, which is one of the reasons probably why.
Wait, are you sure? Isn't that what they put in vaccines? To make autistic children.
Well, the formaldehyde, I believe, for the vaccination thing is it's like a sterilization tool that helps keep the vaccines from being
poisoned. I'm just teasing you, motherfucker.
Oh, come on. If someone's going to listen to this and they're going to be like, oh, shit. Oh, shit. Right.
So to clear up the vaccination thing, yes, there's formaldehyde in your fucking vaccines, but literally if you took all the formaldehyde from all the fucking vaccines you take in a whole life and injected a child full of formaldehyde, it would be less than they naturally produce in one fucking year, and it will not even harm them in the slightest. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, but anyways, these cogeners are something that can increase the hangover severity. So, like I said, drinking clear will probably help it out. Then blending it with the acetaldehyde and the immune system with your cytokines, that's not something that you can adjust or work with. That's just going to be your natural biology. But I'm going to guess, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that all 4 of these things in blends in different levels. So your dehydration, how much your body has broken down the alcohol, how much you've ingested, which would turn into the acetaldehyde, and then cogeners, whether or not you've been drinking, dirty 5-0 rum off the bottom shelf of whatever creepy liquor store or something, and then obviously your body's natural ability to break stuff down, your immune system, a blend of all that is going to be your recipe for whether or not you have a really bad hangover, which I probably have a little bit of an inferior setup than you do, my illustrious co-host here. You say that you don't get them too bad. When I get headaches, I'm almost like ridiculous. It's just always been that way. I've always had headaches though, so like I'm guessing that this is alcohol could be a trigger for that.
Or it could be because I drink too fucking much, and that's why I need the alcohol to sustain my life. And without that,
it keeps the shakes. It stops the shakes away.
But I think the immune system aspect. I think that to me that makes more sense, right? In the cogeners, a lot of that stuff comes from your immune system and the crypto. I don't even know how to say that shit. Huh?
Cytokines.
The cytokines. That's all produced within your immune system. So if you have a higher level of immune system, and I think this would be a good study to do, those of us that have a higher immune system, and I'm not saying I do, but I have a pretty high immune system, ironically enough. If you have a higher immune system, if you get less hangovers, to me that seems like it's a soft correlation. It's probably not, hard evidence, but that's a soft correlation. It should be something that should be examined, because if you have worse, okay, for instance, and I'm going to pick on my buddy Joe, he eats very horrible food. He really does. and he doesn't go out of his way to buy it because he likes the taste of it. He's just very cheap. He does not.
He stays alive using the McDonald's dollar menu.
He's not that bad. He's cheaper than that, buddy. He's cheaper than that. He'll go to those aftermarket type stores and buy food and freeze it. The stuff that's like says it's expired, but you can still eat it for a couple of days. Well, he'll eat some of it and freeze the rest of it and then unthawed as he needs it. But he just for lunch one this off topic story, but 1 month for lunch when he started working with me, he was eating these bars, those chocolate bars that have protein in them, right?
Yeah, like a power bar or something?
Yeah, he was eating 3 or 4 of them, right? And he's like, I feel full, I feel full of energy, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, dude, those are not healthy to eat that many of them. That's not what they're meant for. He's like, well, I got a bunch of these for free. And it's like, well, dude, you're going to shit your fucking brains out.
No, I was going to say the other way around. He's going to be shitting tennis balls. Like, this is going to be in my...
He did. And he did. He had issues. But
he had issues shitting tennis balls?
He had issues. But the whole point is that he does not eat a decent meal except for his dinner. His breakfast and his lunch, and then he drinks 2 energy drinks a day. He smokes probably a half a pack of cigarettes a day at minimum, if not a whole pack. He's just not the most immune system. Now, he takes a hell of a lot of fucking vitamins. I've literally watched him consume handfuls of vitamins sometimes. And so he does take a lot of vitamins, but he does not eat. He's not balanced. His immune system isn't able to balance itself.
Vitamins themselves, something that I've always seen is people are like, oh, get your vitamins, take all the vitamins. Hey, I'll take some extra vitamins. It'll be extra vitamin E. Well, your body, I used to take GNC Mega Men, it was called, when I was an athlete, when I was in sports, and you would piss lightning green. It was insane because all the extra stuff in there, like if you have 2,000% of vitamin A, you're not going to absorb 2,000% of vitamin A. You're going to take as much as your body can handle, and whatever it can't, it just gets rid of. And so, like, people are just jamming vitamins in. You're not doing much.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And so, he has worse hangovers than I do. Genuinely, he actually has developed what he does after hangovers, and he can gauge it based on how much he drinks. And I guess it is what it is. That's his life. That's what he wants to do. I don't care.
You got to know your body.
You do, but we again, with the two of us. I mean, I used to be able to put a fifth of liquor away a night if I wanted to. I mean, I could easily put a fifth of liquor away, no questions asked. Nowadays, if I get a half a fifth in me, I mean, I'm probably gonna have a fucking hangover the next day, or for at least a couple hours. but I have a harder time sleeping drunk than I ever used to. It used to just knock me out before. Now it does. I don't have that. Now it's harder for me to sleep the more alcohol I consume. And it's not because I got to pee as much as it is, well, sometimes if I drank too much Jaeger. But outside of that, it's because of the fact that I just don't want, my body wakes up, I'm dehydrated, I don't feel good. I do get the hangovers, but it's usually from a larger consumption of alcohol, than probably what an average person should even consume. I mean, nobody should consume a half a fifth in a night. You just shouldn't. But so I think it's the good thing about this was a fun segment. See, I like science. We did a fun science segment, Chris. We didn't have to listen to your nerdy ass go off for hours on end.
It happens sometimes. Sometimes we can find a little happy medium in between. But this is a good one because it'll probably help the next time you're drinking and you're feeling a little crappy. You're like, oh man, I'm gonna have to go find some cytokines to see if I can't get my
get rid of some of that. And it's fun, So make sure you all stick around for more Cellar Door Skeptics. When we come back, we're gonna get skeptical on Bernie Sanders. And yes, I'm gonna hold Chris Hanna to the task because we're gonna talk about Bernie's political stance on the prison system and whether he's a fucking hypocrite or not. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hi, this is Sharon Bush, newest and most badass host of the Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
If you guys like what you're hearing on Cellar Door Skeptics, please consider sponsoring us on our Patreon page. Our goal at Cellar Door Skeptics is to help promote more science, skepticism, secularism, and humanism in the world. We want to create better content for our podcast and for you, the listener, all while trying to help promote local activism. We're going to strive to make better podcasts, and I'll tell you what, we're even going to contribute some of the proceeds to charity. So please join us over at Patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics to make sure that you sponsor us for as little as $1 an episode. Thank you guys so much, and prepare for the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
Prison reform? Private prisons? Bernie Sanders? Hillary Clinton? Chris Hanna and I get to talk on this segment of Cellar Door Skeptics about whether we should be skeptical of Bernie's plan, or non-existent plan, for private prisons. And so this episode, or this segment I should say, is inspired by Miss Kate over at Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast. She had an interesting post where she talked a little bit about her skepticism of Bernie's plan for private prisons, and basically his lack of involvement or lack of desire to be involved, and his not outspokenness on the subject. And so I thought this is an interesting topic, and both of us are a little bit more pro-Bernie than we are pro-Hillary. Chris Hanna is almost basically married to Bernie at this point. I mean, hell, half the time he wears, T-shirts over to my house with Bernie all over them, and he's got pictures of him and Bernie at the bar and all sorts of different crazy shit.
And Photoshop's a pretty cool thing, man. You can have friends and hang out with people whenever you want online, I guess.
That's true. So we thought we'd do a little bit of a skeptical view of what Bernie believes the prison system should be, and if he's kind of just basically disagreed. And though, like I said, it kind of started with, a post that Miss Kate made. And she listed a bunch of different articles and said, hey, you should read over these. And she didn't address me. She's just addressing anybody. But she said, hey, look at all these articles and about the sentencing and criminal sentencing and whether Bernie's basically selling prisoners or allowing for prisoners to be sold outside of their state. And Michigan's one of the states that's slated to, I guess, purchase prisoners. It kind of sounds like slavery to me. Just a little bit. But, Michigan is one of them. And so I thought this is a good topic. We should talk about this because, if Bernie is silent on it, we got to challenge him to stand up and say things. Because there's another time that Bernie was very silent about Black lives. Now, I'm not saying any other candidate's better, but Bernie definitely was silent for quite a while about Black lives. Now, I think in the long term, he handled it very well. But we do have to acknowledge that there was an absence of discussion about Black Lives Matter. And whether you agree with me or not on the term, or you agree with me or not on the movement, I don't care. That's not the point of this discussion. The point of this discussion is to examine the fact that even our political heroes, the people we want into office, the people we want to, put up on a podium and say, this is the person I want to fucking elect, this individual has some shortcomings. And so I thought it'd be great to start out and have that conversation.
Definitely. We for sure, obviously, there's no such thing as the perfect candidate. Bernie is my favorite.
I don't know, dude. How many Bernie posts do you have? You have more Bernie posts a day than my parents or my sisters have Jesus posts, just so you know.
Oh, I know that, but I mean, I'm trying to keep the message moving and keep the momentum going.
Well, they say the same thing, too. They say the same thing about Jesus.
Okay. Well, there's no such thing as the perfect candidate. There really isn't. I disagree with a lot of stuff that Bernie talks about for his Israel foreign policy and stuff. We talked about this in the past. This was a comment on Facebook that you tagged me in to bring me into this conversation. I just kind of read through what she had posted and I dug into the articles and the links and things that she had given to try to find out what her argument was, what she was trying to say, and see what kind of validity or vice versa, if there was something that she was overreaching. And my personal opinion is it feels a little bit like a slippery slope or being declared guilty or negligent by non action. So what she basically started off with is the American Legislative Exchange Council. It's ALEC, and this is a prison management system, and it's messed up. It's huge, and it's just it's one of those things that you think about when you think about monopolies and just people being able to do things that they shouldn't be allowed. Too much power as far as the way that they're setting up these things, and they can isolate certain groups of people. I definitely don't like what ALEC is, and she associated Bernie and his prison reform with that. Have you ever heard of ALEC? Have you ever heard of like what it is exactly, or is this a new thing to you too? Because it's relatively new to me.
For me, it was a new thing. I had never heard of ALEC until she had posted this personally, and I could take the blame. It's nothing has come up in my conversations, and so an ALEC corporation seems to be, it's basically like a private prison corporation, is it not?
It's kind of like that. The ALEC is a nonprofit organization, but it's conservative state legislators and private sector representatives that drafts and shares the model state level legislation for distribution amongst the state government. So it's basically, according to ALEC, works to the advance of fundamental principles of free market enterprise, limited government, and federalism, or whatever. But what they do is they provide a forum for state legislators and private sector members to collaborate on model bills. So they draft legislation, so prison legislation, and it's kind of like this boys club, this secret little group that has a ton of power, and they've obviously used that power to strengthen things like the private prison industry and the complex. If you really think it's as big and powerful as it is, that was one of the things that I looked up and found. And this is kind of there's no I could not find anything Vermont being part of this, anything in Bernie Sanders' history being part of this. So this isn't something that he was a major fighter of the industrial prison complex, because one of the things that she posted is that he, in his past, he doesn't have a whole lot of bills. If anything, she said he doesn't have not one single protest against private prison corporations until he runs for president. Now, what do you think about that? Like this, it just kind of shows up out of nowhere.
Well, it depends. It depends, because ALEC is a very well-funded nonprofit. It's a very private.
Huge.
They go out of their way to not have these conversations. They go out of their way to remain out of the public limelight as much as they can. But there's a site called SourceWatch where they basically out Vermont legislators that have ALEC ties. And there is Vermont politicians that do have that. Now, Bernie does not show up on here. but they do have them. So
Are
they have
they
House of
senators?
Representatives Robert Helm, and he is part of the ALEC Energy, Environmental, and Agriculture. I can't say agriculture, I guess, today. Maybe it's the
Agriculture.
alcohol.
Yeah, this is another alcohol episode.
It is. The Agriculture Task Force. He's also an ALEC chair member. So he's not only part of the House of Representatives, he's an ALEC chair member. The Senate, there's a lady named Margaret Peggy Floring. She works for the Public Safety and Elections Task Force. And there's an assistant minority leader, Kevin Mueller. And he's the ALEC state chairman, or was. And then they had a couple of former representatives. But I say we'll address two different things. So to me, ALEC should not have ties within the government. And this to me is lobbying exposure 101, right? Yeah. These people are sitting on this very conservative think tank that help craft laws, and then they're in positions of power to craft laws. They're being bought and sold. Whatever way you want to fucking call it, they're being bought and sold. And if this organization, the one thing I can grant Bernie is that this organization has flown under the radar for quite a while. This is not some big organization that's, they're not like Monsanto where everybody makes them out to be this big evil, organization. This is an organization that has genuinely flown under the radar and under people's, I guess, vision.
They've been able to put a whole bunch of money into the system, and they've been able to kind of nurse this prison complex in there. So we kind of lightly dusted this behemoth under the works there. And so tying it into her argument that Bernie Sanders is either guilty by non-action or that he is in some way connected to this, using govtrack.us, I just did a quick search on Bernie Sanders' responsibilities. What he has, he's a ranking member of the Senate Committee on the Budget, but the committees that he's part of, the Committee of Energy and Natural Resources, Committee of Environment and Public Works, Committee on Health, Education, Labor and Pensions, and Committee on Veterans Affairs. Those are the areas that, he's a member of all kinds of subcommittees and stuff. He doesn't have one on there of prison reform or prison oversight management or anything that would be along those lines. And the only thing I can say to that is that you can't be involved with everything. Bernie Sanders is hyper concentrated toward the economic perspective and dealing with and he has for the last 30 years dealing with the economic inequalities that we're dealing with that are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so he can't do all of those things. And now, since he is on the presidential spotlight, he has to have a position on this. And so what he did was he put out the plan. It's called Justice is Not for Sale Act with Arizona, Minnesota, Illinois representatives. And it basically prohibits the federal government from entering contracts with private prison corporations within 2 years of the bill's enactment. So it's essentially stopping some of this flow to the private prison complex. Because let's face it, we don't really need to have private prisons. I don't like the idea of a company or a corporation making money having prisoners like that. That just sounds wrong. That just sounds weird. It sounds wrong. And 8.4% of the U.S. prisoner. The U.S. prisoner. I can't think of the word. Oh, this alcohol is getting to me too now. The population. There we go. Is 1.6 million inmates are in private prisons. They're locked away in private entities, and so this is that close to that 10% that she had mentioned, and in her argument said so this 10% thing of the prison population, that's what Bernie's reform plan goes to. But it seems like she wants to deal with reforming the rest of the prison complex as well. Is that
a little bit
what you're seeing?
Let's we're gonna backtrack a second because you said something that bothers me a little bit. You said, well, hey, you can't. You're a platform candidate. You can't be for or against everything. And we did talk about this a little bit earlier. And I challenge you because you're right. You can't be for or against everything, but you can acknowledge where your faults are. You can acknowledge where we've missed the spotlight, where we've missed the issue, and we can move on from there. And so, the bigger question is, did Bernie or has Bernie ever addressed this? Has he ever gone out and said nobody should vote for ALEC? Has he ever done it? And if, let's say he made a mistake for 20 years, if he didn't know about it, if it wasn't a big thing, is it acceptable and allowed to happen? Well, I don't know, because there's lots of things that happen when we discover when we should be against them. So, for instance, if somebody was coming into my house every night and staring at me while I'm sleeping, I mean, in the end, they're not really harming me that much. They're violating my privacy. They're violating my personal space. They're trespassing, and if I didn't know they were there, is that something that I should be held accountable for? And I say, no, you probably shouldn't be held accountable for it, but I should be self-aware. I should be aware that these things are happening. I should be aware that all this is going on at that time. And at some point, I should try and figure out a way to help solve the problem. So if I would say, if Alec has been around since the 70s, and they've been getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they were ignored for 20 years because they just had no relevance, so what? If Bernie ignored it at the same time, or it never came across his plate, or he just said, they're not really that big, that's fine. That's fair. Because you're right, you can't be everywhere at one time. But at the same time, you have to stop and admit and apologize and say, okay, you know what, I did miss that. I'm very sorry. How do we address it going from here? And I think that's the point you missed with the Black Lives Matter, Chris, is that he did that, right? He missed that. And he's not using it as a platform issue. I think he genuinely said, oh, you know what? You're right. I missed that. My privilege got in the way. I didn't see that. And then he started to stick up for them. He started to bring people on from their group to say, hey, give me your ideas. How do you want to reform things? What do you want to do to make this movement bigger, to help change the way Black lives are perceived? And I think genuinely, from the bottom of his heart, he's accepting that he made a mistake and is making a mistake. But that's only human, right? If we fucking were perfect, we wouldn't fucking be human, and then God would exist and all this other gibberish, right?
Yeah, well, Bernie, I mean, obviously he started to talk more about the Black Lives Matter stuff, but Bernie Sanders has been, this is just in his history. He rallied with Dr. King. He was part of, the protests and the Civil Rights Acts. He was arrested for fuck's sake on the topic. So, I mean, yes, I agree that, and they did have a point that the Democrats, and that both Democratic candidates that are considered candidates now, because O'Malley's in there, but let's face it, nobody's really considering him seriously anymore. But they needed to be talking more about Black Lives Matter, and by their protests and interrupting the rallies and the events, but Hillary and Bernie were having, got them both to talk more about it, and they did need to talk more about it, especially as white people running for a major position when these things were happening, and that's good, and that's something that Bernie has history with. He has history with fighting for civil rights and things like that. In this case, for the prison situation, he doesn't have as much history with it. And so what does he do? He has to come out and take a position and hold his place. That's the only thing he can do. He can't go back into history and say, listen, I get it. I didn't talk too much about this. I didn't concentrate too much on this. So what do? He put together a plan and he started to do something. There's a couple of videos that I was just doing some basic searching online, and there's this one thing that Bernie, he filed a sweeping labor bill eliminating right-to-work laws, and the right-to-work laws is something that Alec has been a major, powerful force behind it, and this is just him fighting the Alec group, because Alec isn't just for the prison complex there, like a think tank, like you said, that has their hands in a whole bunch of stuff. So, I mean, he has been against that type of major Citizens United money coming in to the government, like these big giant groups like this. And so, I mean, he's been fighting that kind of stuff in the past. And so I would say that he more than likely would consistently have been against, and he would not have supported the private prison complex stuff in the past too.
No, and her argument though, Chris, is her big argument is that he is a state senator. He could have done something, and yet he didn't. He worked within the government, yet he turned a blind eye, if you want to call it that. And again, I can acknowledge that. I could say, hey, if he's ignoring this or he didn't see this, but it's been brought to light, he should apologize for his misgivings. I don't think he's ever done that.
Yeah, I don't know if he's done it. Not. He may have done that when he put together the plan, when he announced the plan that he put together with the other representatives. He may have said, listen, I didn't do enough of this in the past. This is something that if someone else out there knows what this is and has seen him do that or something along those lines, yeah, that would be great to bring to our attention.
He has one. There is a post that he has where he basically says, Alec is being dropped left and right by many corporations because the American public does not want to replace a government of, by, and for the people with a government by and for the corporations. He says, I urge you to not fund ALEC and to withdraw membership from it. He has said this. This is only in 2015. It took him till 2015 to acknowledge it, but he has acknowledged it. He does acknowledge that we are either being silenced or want to be silenced, and they're trying to take legal action, and we need to fight against them. We need to not associate with them. On a larger scale, he has fought lobbying. He's very anti-lobbying. He has gone out of his way to say, I would like to eliminate this. So in a roundabout way, Chris, he has addressed the ALEC situation. Could he do more? Yes. Should he do more? Yes. Hopefully now that it's been brought out into the limelight, it's something he can acknowledge, accept his shortcomings, and move past it. Because in the long run of things, if we don't criticize Bernie, he's never going to get better. That's how we become better people. And without criticism, we aren't able to genuinely be able to say we can grow and learn from our experiences.
Yeah, nobody's above criticism, without question. I think the Prison Act needs to be that what he has, a Justice is Not for Sale Act, needs to be more aggressive, as opposed to getting into just the private prison complex, and trying to scale back and reform the actual national prison systems as well. One of the things that's in the act that I thought was pretty cool, though, is in addition to overhauling private prisons, it eliminates the requirement that, or it says that it calls for the reinstatement of the federal parole guidelines for eligible prisoners. This is to help people get into paroling so they're not stuck in prison forever. But it also eliminates the requirement that immigration and customs enforcement meet a 34,000 bed quota, which leads to the detention and abuse of undocumented immigrants. There's other ties that are kind of getting out there in this act. So it's a little bit past just the private industry. In the prisons and stuff. It's fighting groups like the Corrections Corporations of America and GEO Group, which their GEO Group is $1.6 billion, and Corrections Corporation of America is $1.7 billion, and both of those were in 2011. These are massive, massive corporations. I mean, in the billions, obviously. So those are groups that we obviously don't want to be making money off of people being in jail. And another side effect of that, Bernie's support of decriminalizing things like marijuana and reducing what we talked about, the Black Lives Matter stuff, reducing minorities being targeted for arrests and things. That's going to help reduce the number of people that are in the prison system in the first place, because I do think there's a bias that the law enforcement in this country is targeting in on minority people. And so I know Bernie supports reducing that. So all those things are kind of hopefully reduce the number of people in the prison complex. But like I said, he should have done some more in the past. He concentrated on economics in the past mostly. So this is an area I would love to hear more, and I would like him to be a little bit more aggressive. But if he's more aggressive, could anything ever get done too?
And I think we need to do a show on private prisons. We haven't done that yet. I think that would be a fun topic to do. And I'm very anti-private. I'm actually very anti-prison for the most part.
That's the libertarian coming out.
Huh?
That's the libertarian coming out. This is something that's cool. It was part of the Rand Paul camp for a long time. Is that increasing your freedom? So basically stopping so many people from going to jail for frivolous and trivial things.
Yep.
And then the Democrats and Republicans kind of took it over.
Yep. Again, this is another topic, and we're at the end of the segment. We got to walk away from it. I can't spend any more time on private prison systems and why we keep imprisoning people. But we're going to do another episode, and we're going to do a segment on it, and we're probably going to talk with Keith and Jen about it. So if you like our episode with Keith and Jen from Not Another Atheist podcast that we did 2 weeks ago, make sure you go check them out and check our episode out where we interviewed them, and then we talked about a bunch of fucking politics with a Canadian and a New Yorker. So we will, as we walk away, make sure you stick around for more Cellar Door Skeptics, because we are going to talk about the Flint Water Crisis, because it is disgusting and it pisses me off, and it's one of those things that at this current time, if we don't have a conversation about it, I might just likely explode. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics right here on the only network that allows you to hear Chris and Chris Square. We'll be right back, everyone.
Hey, my name is Jeremiah.
And this is David
from the God Theory Podcast.
And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Prepare for the revolution.
Looking for something new and exciting? Or maybe just a change from the old Atheist Show format? Cellar Door Skeptics podcast provides listeners with hours of enjoyment each week on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out as we talk politics, religion, science, reviews of books and music, along with the occasional interview just for a twist. Join Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern as they bring fresh content to you. Walk with us through the cellar door as we help you prepare for the revolution. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and even on Facebook.
Now, back to the show.
In a world with lead in your water, residents in Flint, Michigan have had to suffer for the last 2 years, all because of a decision made by some Republicans. Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. This episode is bittersweet for me. We're doing this segment because Michigan's our home, and Flint's, a close neighbor of ours. And this topic just, God, this boils my skin.
I know this brings I call Rick Snyder Dick Snyder, and this is a story that makes me just say that Dick Snyder screwed up again terribly.
And this is horrible, and this really got to me, especially when I started doing more research than the articles that I'd seen on Facebook. But this topic about lead poisoning in Flint, Michigan is something that I just wanted to say, fuck you, Rick Snyder, to. And I was trying to keep the explicit tag from having to be used this episode. I was trying very hard. But this segment just, oh man, it really burns my bubbles. And so if you don't know what's going on in Flint right now, you should definitely check out the articles in our description, and they'll give you everything you need to know. You can even look the damn Wikipedia article up, and it has enough information to incriminate the fucking Republicans that made these shitty fucking decisions, all based on capital here. But what basically happened is Flint, Michigan went into a financial crisis, and there was a need for an emergency manager. And if you don't know what an emergency manager is, Google emergency manager Michigan, and you'll find out exactly what that is. Because the big deal with that is that basically the government steps in and says, hey, you can't handle your finances, therefore we're going to do it for you in the means that we choose to do it in. And that's, a lot of people will argue that that's a problem. But the biggest problem is that the officials in Flint and in the state government made decisions to change where Flint got its water from. They were originally buying it from Detroit, piping it in, and using it. They decided they wanted to go to a cheaper source, and they tried to negotiate with Detroit, and Detroit basically was holding out, and it was becoming this big, long argument. So Flint said, fuck it, we're going to go with our own local water, and we'll deal with the fallout. They did not do a bunch of tests. They just switched it over. Their goal is to save $5 million in under 2 years. That's what their goal was by cutting Detroit out. But guess what? They had to build up their infrastructure system and their water plant to even be able to produce the damn water from, the lake.
It's from the Flint River, man. My first thought when I saw that was the Industrial Revolution in Michigan with all of the cars and they didn't have EPA regulations in the past. It was so bad. I can't imagine those rivers deep down, all the carcinogens in the Flint and Detroit River. I wouldn't walk around those on the sandbars of those rivers on barefoot. There's probably some nasty stuff in there. So we're going to start drinking that water now?
Well, one of the big problems, Chris, is that Detroit had a special treatment for this water, right? They treated it a certain way. There's a certain way the water came to Flint and all the different things. When they switched it over to the Flint River, they didn't do the same type of treatment, and nor did they do the testing. And so what happened was the water was more corrosive than the water out of Detroit. And because the water was more corrosive, it was pulling, or they called it leaching, which I thought was a fucking stupid word, but it leaches more of the lead out of the pipes.
Out of the old infrastructure in Flint.
And so what happened is when they started to discover there was an issue, they claimed that they did testing. And that's where I get upset, is because, they're claiming they're doing testing, yet did they really do it? Do we have record that they did it? Are they just lying about it? Did they do bullshit tests? But what happened was, Flint residents were complaining. They were basically saying, "Hey, look, my water is, mucky. It's brown. It doesn't look good."
Yeah, they said it smells bad.
Yes. Too. And nobody did anything about it. They held council meetings. They had conversations, but nobody went out of their way to actually do a damn thing about the water. And so these people had to keep drinking it. I mean, where else the fuck are you going to get your water from? I mean, you think about how much a bottle of water costs, 69 cents to $2.50 at the store, and how much water you drink a day. I can drink a bottle of water in literally 10 minutes. And they're expecting these people by the thousands to have to purchase this or deal with the shitty water. And they kept claiming, hey, no problem, don't worry about the water, don't worry about the water. Well, last October is when everything blew up and got released, and basically they found that people were becoming lead poisoned. Also, there's something called Legionnaire's disease that started to rise up around the exact same time as well, and that was causing sicknesses and deaths. Now, they can't correlate, the two together. They can't prove that the water crisis caused Legionnaire's disease, but it is a coincidence that it happened roughly around the same time. And for me, what the big thing was is that people literally ignored this. They ignored the fact that they were poisoning fucking children of all people. And basically what Flint did is they hired the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and they insisted that they came and checked the pipes and made sure that it wasn't leaching and made sure that they filed the correct paperwork and all these other things. But what's came to light from the Freedom of Information Act, thank you Republicans for fucking yourselves over this time.
Yeah, that's a nice one there.
Yeah.
Nice touch.
That's how they got this information. The public papers, the MLive and the Flint Journal discovered this, that they were falsifying documents, that they didn't go test, they didn't go see if there was lead poisoning. The city doesn't even know the locations of the fucking lead services in the goddamn pipes. They don't even know that. How the fuck could they test something they don't fucking know? It makes no sense.
My first thought is this is just like the in the past with when Ford put out the Pinto. They said, well, these cars are dangerous. This is a dangerous situation. Let's estimate the amount of damage it'll do. We'll give a human life a certain value, $100-something thousand was what they did when Lee Iacocca wanted the Ford Pinto out, and people started dying in these things. So Ford had their estimates on how much it would cost, and I guarantee you these people were probably adding up numbers, thinking, okay, well, how many people could possibly get sick from this? Do they think that we could get caught or trace it back to us? And it was an economic decision. It was they were trying to make money, and it's a utilitarian idea, like try to get the most money and do as little damage as possible, and give people a price tag on their health and stuff. This is an ethical failure. This is something that they're overlooking the ethics for finances, and this is something that it's obviously something that we have come to expect from the conservatives as far as what they do to Flint. I mean, let's face it, Flint is incredibly poor. It's incredibly dangerous, and there's an awful lot of minorities that live in Flint. So, I mean, we're in an economically depressed city, filled with probably filled with immigrants and ethnic minorities. Why doesn't anybody care about this city? Why did they just sweep it under the rug? And we just find out about this just recently. I mean,
it's systematic racism. It literally is.
It really
systematic
is
racism. And
that was
you're
my
right.
first thought.
Let's take if your analogy is right, in the aspect that they decided to rate the cost value of the human life in this situation. They probably sat there and thought, well, they're all lowlifes, right? They're all minorities. They're all low income. They're just a drain on their society. They can't even figure out how to fucking run a goddamn city, so we got to bring an emergency manager in. They probably thought all those damn things, and that's why they didn't place it. Now, granted, maybe Governor Snyder didn't know all the details. I'll grant that maybe he wasn't as involved as he should have been. But there's epic failings in the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. And, ironically, people retired from those departments. They stepped down after all this came out.
And they probably kept all of their government benefits, all their taxation benefits, all the the pension plans and stuff. Even after they poisoned thousands of people, they still get to keep their perks for the job. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and the Freedom from Information Act, basically, that from the MLive Journal basically outed that they disregarded federal rules requiring it to seek out homes with lead plumbing and test them. Take a guess, and I don't know if you read through all the research I threw at you, because I threw quite a bit. Guess how much the legal federal limit per parts per billion for lead levels are supposed to be at.
I'm gonna guess like 1 to 3. Lead is incredibly bad for you.
So they say it's 15. That's what they say, 15 parts per billion. Guess what half or some of the lead homes tested for? Take a guess.
100.
13,200 parts per billion. Now, I don't even want to figure out the statistical increase that is. What is that, like a 1,000,000% increase, for fuck's sake? I don't know what the hell that compounding interest is, but...
That's terrible. That's just really...
Yes.
Well, you said it was, what, 15? You said it was...
15 individual units. So if I had 15 people in this house right now versus 13,200 people in my house, you can't even fit that many people in my house.
That's 1,000%.
That's a stadium worth of fucking people in Michigan.
Man, that's a ton. That is incredibly large. We talked about parts per billion and things when it comes to chemistry and stuff. We were talking about the neonicotinoids for pesticides and things like that, and we're talking 100, 200 parts per billion. Those are numbers that things go from a healthy threshold to a dangerous threshold. But 13,000 when the recommended daily dosage is, or recommended blood dose levels are 13. This is almost negligent homicide.
Yes.
And I mean, I that's my first thought is they said that people have died. I think it was like 100 people or so.
There's 87 cases of Legionnaire's disease. The only problem is the Legionnaire's disease is not something that they can actually genuinely prove came from the water. And they had an independent researcher from Virginia Tech that came over and actually did all this testing. He's, in my opinion, he should be credited, even though he credits the Michigan ACLU and this group called Water You Fight For. A great pun on that. But he actually credits them with doing a lot of their work, even though it's him who did this. And there's a local doctor, and she's the one, her name's Hanna. She discovered this. And then she went out of her way to get somebody to do independent research. And they have a GoFundMe. If you want to check them out, you can help pay for some of their expenses. But he basically says that unless you can discover that Legionnaire's disease inside of the water and then inside of the person, and they have to match identically, that's the only way you can actually prove that it came from it. And so we have to be very careful. We are skeptical here. We don't want to claim Legionnaire's disease is stemmed from this. But I'll tell you what, the coincidences are pretty fucking high. And so I wouldn't put a pin in it, but I would say that if we reduced it and they went down, there's another soft way to look at the statistics for this.
Well, there's also the past numbers of Legionnaire's disease. They could look at the statistical occurrences of Legionnaire's disease in the past and the water quality in the past, and you can correlate that spike, that increase, with the shitty water that was going through the pipes recently and a sharp increase in Legionnaire's disease. Then you have just more statistical information. Obviously, we would need more tests and stuff like that. But I mean, to me, that's a decent way to start. One of the things that you had shared on here is just basically criminal charges. Like what are we looking at for this? Because my first thought was, like I said, this is like negligent homicide in some cases. My first thought is the Nuremberg defense, right? I was just following orders type thing. Well, I'm not responsible. I was just listening to the emergency manager. I'm only one small piece of the government. How can I be responsible for all these bad things that just seem to happen? Keith Corbett, a former federal prosecutor, says criminal charges of these types cases are often difficult to prove. It says when people are put in positions of authority, they make bad decisions and they just don't do their job. It's hard to turn that into crime as far as the court case is concerned. And so once again, like in a lot of cases, this negligence might not actually result in anything, but hopefully at least that the people will get some safe, clean water and maybe some government help, because I know FEMA's involved now,
yes,
at least in helping people get healthy.
Yeah, and in a second we're going to talk about the federal government and their involvement, but let's stay with, are people going to be responsible? Who's going to be held responsible? Well, so they talked that article, and again, we'll post this in the description. The article talked about what happens in these type of situations. But this article talks quite a bit about, what will happen to the people and what will happen to anybody that's involved, and can there be criminal charges? Is it negligence like Hanna says? The best thing that I read so far is that there is no rules or laws on the books that state there's anybody to be held responsible for lying, unless they do it under oath. So in other words, hey, I'm a government official. I can lie to you. We tested your water, but we really didn't. But you can't prosecute me. You can go after them civilly, which is what's happening right now. Right now, Governor Snyder and the state of Michigan and the city of Flint are involved in several lawsuits, personal lawsuits against them. But the article talks about what do we do from here, and unless they can prove that somebody lied or falsified documents specifically, there won't be any criminal charges.
That kind of stuff bugs me a little bit as far as the civil suits are concerned, because you hear someone, they win a civil suit against a state legislator who does a terrible job and shitty things. Where does that money come from? That legislator doesn't pony up that house they have in the Caymans or wherever the hell they got their money. No, it's the city. It's the state. It's our taxes. It's the local people. It's the people who put money into the state government. Those are the ones who pay for civil suits. It sucks that these people aren't going to be held responsible, even if it's financial. The people the people that are suing they're suing the city, they're suing the state, as opposed to suing the asshole who sat in that office, who should be, there should be consequences for this. Like, I don't understand why there's a separation. Obviously,
it almost sounds like separation of church and state.
No, well, asshole and the separation between asshole and criminal, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, one of the other founding things is Snyder was asked, and he asked Michigan legislation to donate money to help out this crisis, right? But he didn't cover all of it. The fucking government is responsible for this, but yet they're not going to cover all the costs. And you know what else was discovered? And this one's a kicker here. This is a big one. They discovered if they actually wanted to repair all the water lines instead of the city, guess how much it would cost to repair that? Over $1 billion to fix the lead water lines in the city. Isn't that amazing? And so originally it was, hey, we want to save, X amount of $1 million by switching to Flint. And then, oh shit, now I got to invest in a water plant and some new chemicals. All right, so we're going to save just a tiny bit of money, but over the long run, that tiny bit of money will turn into a large pile of money. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, you did this and you fucked everybody. If you just stayed with the other water, nobody would be getting sick. But now that we're all getting sick and we're all screwed because now the lead's just coming off into the water, and it don't matter what water it is, it's coming off into it. Now we got to replace all these fucking lines.
Yeah, for me, in cases like this, when it's like we have to save money, where you don't save money? You don't save money in the utilities. You don't save money on the infrastructure that keeps the American people alive. You save money on frivolous things that are, bureaucratic horseshit. And red tape and stuff that,
like them getting insurance for life. How about that?
Yeah, any of those kinds of things. Like, you don't fuck with the water, man. Like, that's not something that we need to save some money. We need to save $5 million, and so we're going to take a chance at possibly screwing up the whole entire water system or whatever. There are some things that you don't mess with when it comes to taking a chance if people are going to get sick or something could go. If something goes really, really bad, what happens? People die. Yeah, we're going to try to take some money out of something else instead.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the video game that I'm obsessed with and been playing called Fallout 4. And, like one of the big things for your settlements is you got to put water purifiers in because otherwise your fucking residents die. And it's ironic, when I didn't have a water purifier, none of the fucking raiders attacked me. Get a water purifier and shit, they all want to come steal my resources and kill my people. And it's just funny because I hear about this, last year, and it bothered me. And the more I read about it, the more angry I get. And I should have said something long before now. We should have been standing out. I'm calling for fucking Rick Snyder's impeachment. Fuck him. Get him the fuck out of office. I don't want to see him in office anymore. And he's going to be defined by this. This is going to define him. And I'm kind of glad it defines him. because I hate Governor Snyder. He has done almost zero good for Michigan. He's not enhanced jobs in a certain way. He's literally made low-level jobs and said, hey, look, I'm getting rid of unemployment because, by God, we got more jobs. Well, you got a lot of low-level jobs.
And he attacked the unions with the right-to-work legislation. He said that he would not support right-to-work, and then all of a sudden, now he does.
Yes, because it's a Republican mentality. He's already here. It's at the end of his term. He can't get elected again, so fuck it.
He said all the BS to try to get reelected. He said, I won't support right-to-work, and then all of a sudden he does once he's back in office.
Yep. And so I'm glad this defines him, because I'm glad that for fucking once he gets to be taken down and knocked down a peg. And everybody at work that says, "Oh, Rick Snyder," I could go. He's responsible and he's associated with the Flint Water Crisis, and it's not because he did it, but it's because he ignored it. He's purposely let the whole thing go, and it doesn't matter if you got residents protesting at your Capitol. And I know you ain't sitting at the Capitol, but if you got residents with jars of fucking brown water at the Capitol and it's in the newspaper, don't you fucking goddamn think maybe you should stop whatever the hell you're fucking doing and go, hey, this might be important, guys. Maybe we should stop talking for a few minutes and examine this situation, because they're drinking brown water. And I tell you what, fucking Rick Snyder, if your goddamn person or your kids or your wife or whatever were drinking that water, you'd fucking do something about it in a heartbeat, and you fucking know that.
Yeah, if the town that was filled with lead in the waters was like Grand Rapids or Bloomfield Hills or some higher end city in Michigan, I guarantee you that stuff would not have sat and waited as long as it did. Once again, this is that kind of systemic racism and economic racism, or not economic racism, but economic oppression by people that have power and that say, "Oh, Flint's a poor whatever. We're just going to take a chance with the water."
Yeah, to me, whether they want to take ownership, which they haven't fucking taken ownership of it. Probably because
there should be a huge policy about this.
Yeah. The big thing becomes that there was an infrastructure problem. There was a dollar amount problem. And because of the way they wanted to separate the counties because they didn't want to invest. I mean, for fuck's sake, Jenison built a, multi-million fucking dollar student arts center. God damn it, we could have donated some money to fucking pay for Flint's water to become from Detroit for 1 year. We could take percentages of our tax dollars, but it's because of the way they're set up, because we're allowed to do this, because Michigan's a pretty fucking Republican state. They can do and move money around and keep taxes in certain areas that they shouldn't. It's economic disparity. And people can complain. And it's funny because some of my neighbors and some of the people in my township and here in Jenison, Michigan, have basically said, well, we don't want more low-income housing because we don't want low-income people. And it's like, oh, you mean you don't want minorities to come here?
It's NIMBY.
Yeah.
Not in my backyard.
Exactly. We have that problem in Jenison. And it's funny because when they started talking about it, I start going out and supporting it. I go down the damn town halls and I say, no, fuck that. Let them do that. And it's bad because the person building it is going to make a hand over fist off the government. The guy building these Section 8 housing, he's going to make shit tons of money off the government, off of our tax dollars. But at some point I say, maybe it's better to economically diversify first so that we can stop creating some of this nuisance issues. But we have all these people just ignoring the issue. They're just fucking ignoring it. And they're basically saying, this is not a complaint. This is not negligence. This is not in any way a serious problem. But yet, people are going to get sick. They're going to have all these fucking issues. And if we diversified a little bit more, maybe we would understand that, black people are just like us. We'd understand that, their color of their skin defines them differently. But in reality, we're just fucking human. And that we need to recognize that we're systematically discriminating against fucking black people and minorities. For fuck's sake. Why? Why is this happening? This needs to stop. And that's what drives me nuts about this whole fucking goddamn issue, is the fact that we get to see executive privilege. We get to see white fucking lawmakers be exempt from being held responsible for their issues. So fine, you don't want to send them to jail? That's fine. I agree with it. Step down from your post, Governor Snyder. Turn around and figure out a way to goddamn figure out how to fund and submit money to help these poor people in Flint out. As Hillary Clinton said, we don't need later action. Thousands of children may have been exposed to lead, and there's irreversible harm and health to these goddamn children, these innocent people. And somebody needs to be held responsible. And if nobody's going to be held responsible, they at least deserve a fast solution. And that is what we need out of our government here in Michigan. We need fast solutions to fix this problem in Flint.
Yeah, this is an emergency. This needs to be taken care of as quickly as possible. And I've heard about it a little bit in the news. The media needs to talk about this. I haven't seen a lot of stuff coming from a national media. This is a state of emergency because of negligence. There's no way around it. The heads need to roll.
Yes. And I encourage you, if you're listening to this right now, clip this part or email me. I'll clip this part. Send this to your fucking local legislators. Stop voting Republicans. Stop voting the Democrats out of office. Do it. Because we didn't have this issue when Jennifer Granholm was in office. We had this issue with Rick Snyder because his goddamn business mind and say, let's enhance the small businesses. Let's save money. Well, at some point, your conservative fucking attitude towards money has fucking harmed the people of Detroit. Has harmed the people of Flint. So at some point, you need to stop being money grubbing and trying to save money, and let's figure out how we're going to fund and support those that are in need, and let's stop poisoning children. This has been another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much for sticking around for this very energy-filled.
Talk about changing tone quick, man.
I am. We have to close out of this, Chris, because if I spend too much longer, I'm going to have a heart attack, and you're going to have to be taking me to the hospital. This bothers me. And I'm not going to go on another tirade. If we even talk about Flint, if I have to say Flint one more time, I'm probably just going to go off again. So make sure you stick around for more Cellar Door Skeptics. We'll be back next week with a lot more information, a lot more fact-checking. And we're going to probably talk about pot next month. We had too much fucking alcohol for the last couple episodes. So we're going to talk about anthropomorphic principle and the principle of the mediocrity. We're going to talk with a podcast called Unbuckling the Bible Belt. We're going to talk about pot. And we're going to talk about more current events. Then after that, I have a debate. There's a debate coming up about the existence of the Christian God. You don't want to miss that. We are going to do a live debate for that. And then when we come back in February with episode 18, we're going to have Not Another Atheist podcast joining us again for an excellent episode. Check out our Spreaker. Check out our iTunes. Like us on Facebook. Tweet at us at Cellar Door Skept. And hell, check out our newly designed website with all the awesomeness of a non-expert website designer. But check it out. Make sure you support us. We love you guys and girls. Have a great night. Thank you for sticking around for more Cellar Door Skeptics. We'll see you guys and girls next week. Remember, prepare for the revolution. Have a good night, everyone.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker, CellarDoorSkeptics.com.